basically. It's kind of what's going on with people. How's everybody doing? We're doing it back to back. I got the sister right here. She's going to share her story on how she's a comedian, and I kind of watched her last night, and I've been trying to get her, but I seen her. How I seen you, you was on a flyer on it down at the fellowship. You're supposed to go to Florida.
Yeah, so
And I
it's supposed to be
seen
in
you and I
Dayton
hit you up. I
tonight.
said, yeah, and I said, we got to bring some diversity to this cast, and but I'm gonna pray you in. You're gonna share your experience, strength, and hope. Y'all might you women, you might want to listen to what she has to say. I know everybody carries the message different, and you're funny, so I've been waiting to get you on here, man, and I really appreciate you, sister, for getting on here and committing. Because I remember last night you was like, "Oh, I can't go. I gotta run the show last night." God just shows up in mysterious ways. This is what He does. And
He
so
sure
if
does.
everybody can get this shared out, share this thing out, drop the clean dates, the drill. Um, get the clean dates, get some hope going, drop where you're located from. You definitely don't want to miss this message. I'm gonna pray you in, and I'm gonna let you take over.
Let's do it.
All right, Lord Almighty God, I just want you to place hands on this sister and lift her up tonight and allow her to carry an honest, transparent, truthful message of recovery that just touched that one person that is suffering inside their own mind and using against her own will. And that she just gets vulnerable and transparent tonight, and that she struggles with any low self-worth, any lack of confidence, or any low self-esteem, that you just lift that off of her and you place a message on her tonight to carry the message and just touch that one person. Amen. So go ahead.
Amen.
It's
Oh,
all
thank you for
yours.
that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that prayer. One of the things that I do love about recovery is that we get to develop a relationship with a higher power, and that nobody has a monopoly on God. But yet, it's really beautiful to me when the relationship that you have with God, you are empowered by that, and you share it just in your truth. And I think so. I really appreciate you praying me in, because that's how you connect to your higher power, and it gives me permission to connect with mine in that moment. And I have a similar thing before I ever speak, whether I'm performing or speaking. I always try to get myself out of the way, and so my prayer is always, please God, enter where I know that you already abide. And I say, when I perform, I say, please God, help me play joyfully in the circumstance and use me so I may know the joy of being used by you. And so I hope that I can be a messenger tonight for you. Thank you so much for asking me to come on to your program. I'm so honored. It's like one of the things that I've learned in recovery is that we can only carry the message and we can't carry the addict, and that we have to. This is a program of attraction and not promotion, and so I noticed that when I'm in my highest self and I'm committed to the work, that's when people ask me to participate in my own recovery. I mean, I participate in my recovery every day, but I noticed that when I try to almost pitch myself, whether it's through my career or any area of my life, that never works. When we come from a place of this is my story and I'm sharing it with you, instead of from a place of sales, I think that's always a more resonating place to begin from. And that's what people are drawn to. So I'll give you a little backstory on my journey. It took me a really long time to come to terms with the fact that I was an addict. Jails, institutions are not a part of my story, and I think that kept me in denial for a really long time. My active addiction didn't really start until I was in my early 20s. I experimented like everybody experiments in high school and college. And so I had this whole script of what I thought an addict looked like. And, they were pushing a shopping cart down the street and they were missing teeth. And it was just, that wasn't a part of my story. And it kept me sick for a long time. And I remember one of the first things that somebody said to me when I entered the rooms was, Renee, do not look down on anybody unless you're helping them up. And that changed how honest I got with where I was and how I got there, and that there was a reason why I was sitting in that room, and that I needed a message just like any other addict. And so a little bit about my story. I grew up in Massachusetts. I'm the first generation American. Both my parents are immigrants. My mother is a Cuban immigrant. She came here during 1962 during the Cuban Missile Crisis. She's from Havana. Welcome, come on in. My father is a Portuguese immigrant from the Azores, which are like the islands up the coast of Portugal. They met in high schools, like in English as a second language class. They got divorced when I was very young. I share my backstory because I actually did not realize until I was much older that I was even like first generation American. I didn't know my parents were immigrants. My parents were so scared and they wanted to Americanize themselves so much that like, you know, they immigrated all the way up to Massachusetts, moved into a predominantly white neighborhood where no one knew that we were Latina, didn't teach us any Spanish, and kind of hid our culture from us. And so I grew up in a place where I didn't really know what my identity was. And I think for me, I had a strong pull to understand my origin. And so my first addiction was fantasy. I created this story because I didn't know who I was and I didn't know where I was from. I didn't find out that I was Cuban until I was 16. I went to go get my driver's license, and on my birth certificate it said my mother's birthplace was Havana, and I was like, wait, what? I'm Cuban? Like, I had no idea that I was Cuban, and it really messed with me. And the reason why this pertains to my addiction is I think one of the reasons why I got lost in that world is because I needed to feel a sense of belonging. And when I started using drugs and alcohol, that gave me a sense of belonging because I didn't know who I was. My parents got divorced very, very young. I grew up in a pretty abusive home. My mother is schizophrenic and manic depressant. She struggled with mental illness. My aunt Lizzie, my mom's sister, who was very close, she babysat us on weekends. She was murdered in 1986, and like my mother was never the same. She just kind of went nuts. She had 4 little girls that just needed her, and she couldn't really raise us. And so we were kind of on our own trying to figure out like what we were supposed to do with our lives. And I felt very much like a burden. And it's interesting because as we do the work around here, we see how of these traumas from our childhood, like manifest themselves in our, you know, going through the process of recovery. And I remember for a long time, I didn't seek to have a sponsor. I thought I could do it on my own because I was so scared to be a burden. And I didn't realize that, like, it wasn't until I had done a 4th step that I was like, wow, that's where this came from, is that I grew up in a place where I was like, I was 3rd born and my mother was exhausted by the time she had me. And so like, I always felt like a burden and that my story wasn't enough. And, so when, things got kind of wonky in my teenage years. When I was 14 years old, I was placed in the foster care system, and that's really where my experimentation with drugs and alcohol began. I don't want to go too much off on a diatribe of my using, but it planted a seed for me because this may be controversial to say, but when I was in the foster care system, using drugs and alcohol sort of saved my life because I was like this goody two shoes when I was 14. And I just wanted to like take all the advanced classes and like, I remember the first time I met with my social worker in foster care, they said that 3% of foster kids even go to colleges or take advanced classes. And I was like, that was the kind of defiance I had. I didn't want to be defiant with drugs and alcohol. I'm like, I'm going to take advanced placement classes and be the one foster kid that gets into college. And like, and so my foster siblings hated me. They hated me because they thought I was too good for them, which wasn't the case. I actually hated myself inside, but I grew up in a place where that's what defined our worthiness, is whether or not we were smart or we went to school or got a good education. And so I sort of was just going by the script of it. But when I just discovered drugs, and all of a sudden I felt a part of, and my foster siblings stopped bothering me and stopped. They used to, you know, like hit me and push me around and like lock me in closets and just do crazy stuff to me. And then as soon as I started participating in their using, like I became one of them. And so peer pressure really was the beginning of my story. But I also felt like all of that identity crisis I had had as a child, where I didn't know where I belonged, it didn't matter anymore. because drugs made me feel like I belonged. And all of a sudden I was in this like motley crew of young displaced kids that their parents didn't want them, and that was my identity, and that's where I belonged. I was like, oh my God, I don't need to know what my origin is. I'm a displaced foster kid, and fuck the world. Am I allowed to swear? Sorry, can we bleep
Yeah,
that
go
out?
ahead.
All right.
Raw and uncut. It's raw and uncut. It's a raw and
But-
uncut page.
All right. But so yeah, I mean, that was really where my active addiction started. And then I used through high school, but it didn't bury me yet. And, they say that this disease is a progressive disease, and that obviously was a part of my experience. But when in 2002, I graduated from college and I moved to Los Angeles, and I drove across country, and I met my very first girlfriend, and I did a line of blow off her belly button. We were together for 5 years. Seriously, it was literally like I had this nostalgic experience with cocaine in this really like high end club, and I thought I had like made it in Hollywood. It was completely a delusional experience, and I was locked in. And I then I did blow every single day of my life for the next 7 years of my life, and then I juxtaposed that with pills. And because I wanted to stay in denial, I started running marathons, like with cocaine in my electrolyte mix. I ran the 2008 marathon literally with 16 Oxycontin in my bloodstream by the end of the race, and cocaine in my electrolyte mix. I almost had a heart attack at mile 19. I was rushed to the hospital. Like I was nuts, but I didn't think I was an addict because I'm like, I'm an athlete. Like I went to college, I'm an athlete, but I had like 16 Oxy in my bloodstream. Like, you know what I mean? I wasn't exempt from this. And it got to the point in the end of my active addiction where I would put, I was high on something every day. And I actually do make a joke in my stand-up when people ask me what my drug of choice is, which we all know as addicts, that's not relevant. But when normal people ask us that question, because it always seems to be relevant to them, I always say my drug of choice is yours, more, and free. Like that's basically the answer. If I could get more of it, or I could get it from you, or I could get it for free, that was my drug of choice. Like it didn't really matter what I signed up for. And I think that kept me sick for a long time too, because every 2 or 3 years I would switch what I used, So I'm like, well, I'm not a cokehead anymore. I mean, I do 16 pills a day, but I'm like, fine. And then I went from doing narcotics to doing benzos. And then I was combining benzos and narcotics, and then I was doing speedballs, and I snorted heroin. I never injected heroin, so I wasn't really an addict, because addicts inject drugs, they don't snort them. And I'm like, you're still doing heroin, Renee. Like, toward the end of my addiction, it was just like I was nuts, and I was high every minute of every day. On my 29th birthday, I was like, the day before my 30th birthday, the last day of my 29th year of life, I'm like, forget this. I'm getting rid of all my drugs. And I tossed all of my pills down the toilet. And the stroke of midnight came, and it was my 30th birthday, and I was sick. And I just, actually, I do take that back. It was my 29th birthday, because I thought, you know what, I turned 30 in a year, because this was 2009. Yeah. Sorry, mom was 40 this year. I was doing the math wrong. Yeah. So it was my 29th birthday. And I had that moment. It was like this spiritual like crisis where I'm like, I need to stop doing this. I threw all my pills away. I'm like, I've got to get this mastered. In my head, it was like I had to master this by the time I was 30, because that was when I was supposed to be a grown up, like that's what I just believed. And so I threw my pills down the toilet, and I started deeply going through withdrawals the next day. And it didn't work. And I was scared. And that was really in my abstinence was when I had the epiphany that I was truly an addict. And I'm not sure if that's other people's experience, because when I was active, it didn't haunt me as much because I was good, right? Like when I was abstinent, I was always looking for ways and means to find more. And that's when I became really cognizant that I was an addict, because everything became about when I could get more. And then when I started doing triathlons toward the end of my active addiction, I would like be abstinent for like 2 or 3 weeks before the race. And I'm like, okay, we're going to, you're not going to use. And then your reward at the finish line is you're going to get wasted. And then I would go on. So I would do triathlons and be abstinent for 2 weeks. And then as soon as I crossed that finish line, I would be high as a kite for 90 days. And someone would have to scrape me off the ground, and then I'd be abstinent. So I was like a binge user toward the last year of my addiction. And it was really in those moments of abstinence that I was like, this is really scary. And So the bottom for me that really got me clean was well, I had two bottoms, but my bottom in 2009 was really a spiritual bottom for me. Um, because in 2006 I had done way too much blow, and I started like writhing in pain. My nose was in so much pain. Like my addiction got so bad that this night in 2006, like I literally couldn't get any more blow up my nose. So I started parachuting it. And I don't want to educate people on drug use, but basically parachuting is when you put like a rock of cocaine inside
Yeah.
of a plastic bag and swallowed it like a pill, right? And like that's how bad it was getting, that like my nose was so on fire and it was bleeding that it literally wouldn't work, that I had to start parachuting it that night just to get high. And then all of a sudden I had just done too much because I didn't know how much I was supposed to ingest because I was used to snorting it. And I had this hallucination where I saw my little girl. Like I was looking in the mirror and I literally saw like my 8-year-old self in the mirror saying, Renee, wake up. And I was like, I'm up. And I was talking to her in the mirror. And all of a sudden I passed out. And 2 days later, my girlfriend's father came in and I was in a pool of blood. I had a massive ear infection because I had fallen into a pool of blood because my septum had actually fallen out of my nose. I lost my entire septum. And that's what that blood was. And so I had to have surgery to replace my septum inside my nose because like that's how bad my addiction got. But the crazy part about that story is that was not my bottom. That was when I stopped using cocaine and I just switched my drugs. I went to rehab for 24 hours and left. I was like, forget this. I just need to put the coke down. Like I got it, message received, and I thought I knew better. And for the next 3 years of my active addiction, I only drank. So I told everybody I was clean. I didn't understand the concept of being clean is complete abstinence from all mood and mind altering substances. And alcohol is a drug. It's just a liquid drug. And so in my denial, I started professing to people. And this is one of the reasons why I started this out with like, this is a program of attraction, not promotion. And so when I stopped doing blow in 2006, like I was recruiting people like, you should stop doing blow and da-da-da, like I'm clean. And I was like, I had this false identification with me saying that I was clean, and I just wasn't at all. And I basically transitioned into becoming a full-blown alcoholic for 2 years. And then I started transitioning to using a bunch of narcotic pills and what have you. But flash forward to 2009 when it was more of a spiritual bottom. And one of the reasons it was confusing to me is I didn't understand why that experience in 2006 wasn't a bottom for me. But it was, my girlfriend had pneumonia, and she was given Tylenol with codeine, and I had thrown out my pills again because I was in another cycle where I would do this, where I would get scared. And I'm like, never mind. And I would get rid of my drugs and be like, when we're in our active addiction, we don't realize that we cannot control it. We just have to have a willingness to allow for somebody else to guide us. Like that's really all we need to begin this work, is just a willingness to change. We don't need to know how. And in that moment, I thought like, I need to know how. I need to know how to stop. Like I can control, manage, and manipulate this. And I didn't realize that that was my disease, because it's hard when our disease sounds like us. And we do have the only disease that tells us we don't have a disease. So it's very hard to make good choices from that place. And that's why they say like, you can't fix your old thinking with your old thinking. And the only way to get new thinking is to start taking suggestions and realize like your brain's broken. Like as soon as I was having any kind of thoughts on how I could deal with managing my addiction, I realized that like, that's literally not going to work, because I'm using like that's like using a car that has flat tires and expecting that I'm going to get somewhere. Like that shit wasn't working. It was broken. But I thought that, I could get through the withdrawal thing by stealing my girlfriend's medicine. And I took Benadryl and I poured out the codeine into a separate bottle, and I was stealing it just to get high. And I put Benadryl in her codeine bottle, and she got more and more sick, and her pneumonia got worse, and she was hospitalized for it. And I realized at that moment, like, this is fucked up. Like, I'm stealing my girlfriend's medicine, who was not an addict. And this was a different girl, because that's the other thing addicts do. Like somebody breaks up with us and we just fill that void with the next person. So at this point, this was a different person than in my early addiction. But so that was really that was really like the bottom for me. And I went to a 12-step meeting on August 13th, 2009. I took 2 shots of tequila and then went to a 12-step meeting. And I listened to all of the literature in the back of the room and I cried like a baby. And that's when I knew that I had earned my seat. Thank you, Angela. That's a sweet comment. I'm glad I can, I appreciate, sometimes I get nervous to bring some of my humor to my experience in recovery, but, it is a part of my story. And it's very much like how I've coped, because I believe that laughter is what prevents my pain from scarring. And, the most resonate, I'm sort of skipping around here, but, I was inspired by Angela's comment to comment on it. And we're not in a meeting, so I can crosstalk.
Yeah.
But I just lost my train of thought. I'll find it again. My higher power will
You
bring
said
me
you
back
did.
if I'm
You
supposed to
carried
talk
it.
about.
They carried. You was in a meeting. You read some literature, or they read some literature, and then you was crying.
Yes. So, and that's really when I knew that I had earned my seat in the rooms, and I think, one of the things I do sort of want to say, because I think, for an addict like me, I had a reservation that was planted that day. Even though I knew I had earned my seat, there was a reservation that was planted in me that day, because somebody came up to me in the meeting, and I sort of looked like that. I mean, I was a little more beat up than this. I was picking at my skin. I looked crazy, but I had all my teeth. I had a job, and somebody came up to me and said, "You know what, bitch? Why you crying? You still got your shoes on." And it was really upsetting for me, because it was like, I started getting that messaging of like, I've spilled more heroin than you've ever ingested, and all of that stuff. And then, so that was my reservation, that I wasn't addict enough to be there. And that I held on to that reservation. Like, maybe I could use again, and maybe I just need a break. And like, maybe I am taking up somebody's seat, and there's like a sick dope fiend out there. And like, I'm sort of just being an asshole by being here, because like, maybe I could manage it and whatever. So I always had this like weird seed in the back of my head that I got from, in that same moment that I felt like I belonged, I also felt like I had to prove that I belonged. And so over the years, like, I didn't really immerse myself in the fellowship in 2009. I was abstinent. But what I've realized through my work in this program is that clean time and recovery are 2 different things. They don't have to be 2 different things, but sometimes they are. And so that was very much part of my story. Even when I was asked to share, I started to get cocky, because I started to get the money, the property, the prestige. When I had 3 years clean, I opened for Wanda Sykes in the Dominican Republic. Like, I finally was working as a professional comic. And I don't say that to flaunt, but I say that because I started to get complacent. And I was like, you know what? Narcotics Anonymous has given me what I've needed. Like, I'm good. I got this. And it was like, I started to take back my will, and I thought I knew better. And I forgot that this program saved my life. And when I had 4 years clean, I remember 2 days, I had just taken a cake for 4 years. And 2 days later, I was asked to share. And I remember when I shared that day, I said that I had my bachelor's degree in recovery, because I had 4 years. And it was like, there was this cockiness around it, and an inauthenticity. And some people shared that night, and I could see, like, I had enough recovery that I could see the watcher saying like, "Mayday, Mayday." Like, I knew that I was inching on dangerous territory in this window. And, my sponsor always says to me, "You're either host to God or hostage to your disease." And you can't be both. And I could see in that moment that I was hostage to my disease, because I was starting to talk about the things that didn't matter. And I was getting cocky. And I forgot that, like, if you don't stay in the center of the fellowship, you will fall off the edges. And that was my experience. And on September 3rd of 2013, I took my will back, and I relapsed after 4 years clean. My relapse was one single pill. And I share this because one of the things that I learned in the rooms, it took me a very long time to get honest about my relapse. Because I only took one, but this program taught me that one is too many and 1,000 is never enough. And what I learned through that one pill that I took is, I was on this precipice. I was on this precipice where I had lost my clean time, but not my freedom. And I thought, what am I going to do in this moment? Because that disease voice got loud. I was like, well, you've never shot up heroin. You've never, whatever. I was in this window of 11 days where I was not honest about that one. And I thought either I'm going to have a needle in my arm or 6 months in 6 months, or I'm going to walk into a meeting right now, take a newcomer chip and get honest, because this program taught me that integrity is what you do when no one's watching. And I knew that that was wrong. My intention was bad. I didn't take that pill because I need it. I took that pill because I was curious, because I had a reservation that was planted 4 years early that maybe I wasn't addict enough. And I took it because I was curious and I was cocky and I thought I knew better. And it was one of the most humbling experiences. And so I went into it the next day on September 4th, 2013. I went into a meeting and I took a newcomer chip, and it was embarrassing and it was shattering, but it was also the most transformative experience of my life. And I'm not advocating that anybody relapse, but for this addict, it was that jarring experience that reinvigorated my recovery. They say that in our literature, and I know it sounds cliche, but like cliches exist for a reason. It was that moment, because you know what happened that day that I took a newcomer chip? I was completely shattered. And my ego had lost all control. And that's where our disease lives. Our disease is our ego. And when your ego has lost complete control, that is the moment in which we can transform. We need it to, as long as it's in control, we can't change, you know? And so it was awful. I've been through a lot of experiences in my life. I've had crazy experiences in my active addiction. I've been pushed out of moving cars at 35 miles an hour and broken bones and ribs. And that day that I took a newcomer chip for taking one Adderall was one of the most painful experiences of my life and one of the most life-changing of my entire life. So it's not always about what it looks like on paper. And I learned that about my addiction. I remember when I came back into the rooms, my sponsor said to me, Renee, don't ever let anybody tell you haven't earned your seat, because just because you get on the elevator does not mean you have to get off on the bottom floor. And that there was a level of courage for me to come back into these rooms. And I didn't share my relapse for a long time. Like when I had relapsed, I had moved from Los Angeles to New York City. And so I had about 18 months back when I moved to New York City. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be honest, right? I'm going to be honest and tell people I have 18 months clean. I'm not going to lie about my clean time. But I wasn't telling people that relapse was a part of my story. I wasn't telling people that I had 4 years clean, that I had worked a program, that I had commitments at meetings, that I had worked the 12 steps, that I was sponsoring women, and I still fell off the edges because I decided to take my will back, because I had a reservation, and reservations are dangerous. And I knew that like I had to get honest. And when I moved to New York City, I heard this amazing share in a meeting that really changed my life. And relapse was a part of this addict story that was sharing that night. And she had said that that our addiction is like a sugar packet. And she gave this analogy about when she had had 10 days clean and she had met with somebody and they sat down with her like at a cafe, and she took her sugar packet and she put it on her iPhone. And she said, your disease is this sugar packet, and who you are is this iPhone. And the iPhone, this was like the iPhone 1, you guys, so it wasn't very big. It wasn't much bigger than the sugar packet, you know? And she said, you know, right now your addiction is everything. It's a whole part of your experience. And then when you stay in the rooms and you do the work, and she took the sugar packet and she put it on the two top table, and she said, your addiction is this sugar packet, and your consciousness is this two top table. And then she took that sugar packet and she said, and she put it on the ground of the cafe. And she said, then you're going to start sponsoring people. You're going to start sharing at meetings, and you're going to start sharing your recovery and not your drug use anymore. And all of a sudden your consciousness will become this room, and your addiction becomes the sugar packet. And then you stay in the rooms longer, and you start going to conventions, and you're of service to other addicts, and you get commitments at the area level. And then she walked outside and she said, your addiction is this sugar packet. And she put the sugar packet outside, and she said, your consciousness and your recovery becomes the world. But she said, if for 1 minute that you forget that sugar packet is there, that's when you're in danger. And that was my experience in my relapse. I started to get all of these things that we get, and I forgot that sugar packet was there. I forgot to respect this disease. I forgot that it's just waiting, doing push-ups, waiting us to put down our guard, for us to have a bad day, for us to negotiate with our disease and decide how honest we want our program to be that day. And as soon as I'm in the driver's seat and my higher power isn't, that's when I forget about that sugar packet. And that was my experience in 2013. And I knew that So I actually have a Domino's sugar packet now that I keep in my wallet, and I just remind myself that that's my disease, and I respect it. I respect it, and I know that I earned my seat in these rooms, and recovery is one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me in my life. I love having access to the 12 steps. I'm on my 4th step again. I'm doing a 4th step right now on relationships, and it's really, it's messy, especially in quarantine. I'm like alone in a room, and I'm like,
on that right now.
I'm like, it's a lot. It's a lot. I'm like, Jesus, don't teach me nothing new today. Do you ever have those moments where you're like, so I mean, I've been very grateful to have this toolbox, especially in quarantine. You know, I'm like, wow, to have access to these Zoom meetings, to be able to go to meetings all over the world. I went to a meeting in Ireland the other day, and I'm like, to be able to meet addicts all over the world and know that like we have a family and a support system during this. Like, we are so lucky. I am so grateful for this program, and to be able to have this toolbox and to be able to be gentle on myself and forgive myself and know what is my part. And, you know, especially being in this quarantine, like I've been noticing I'm not staying in my lane, and I start to take other people's inventories. And I get grateful for the fact that I have that awareness today, and I can say, you know, easy does it. And I can do a writing exercise. Like I have access to that today. You know, I get really mad at somebody, and I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? Like, in my head, I'm like, I'm going to write a letter about everything that I hate about you and how you've done me wrong. And then I'm never going to send it to you. And then I'm going to circle what my part is and get to the other side of it. And I'm like, I love that this is my way to cope, because, like, you know, 10 years ago, I would have called you and said how you did me wrong with all my victim consciousness and stayed stuck. And I'm like, thank God we have this toolbox today where we get to like show up for our lives and admit that we're fallible and imperfect. And the more honest I get about who I am and the things that I don't get right, I find that other people get honest with me. You know, since I got really honest about that one pill too, it's very interesting to me. And I would never break their anonymity, but I've had more than one addict come up to me that has taken like dirty cakes and dirty chips and celebrated clean time because they took one and they considered it a hiccup and they didn't consider it a relapse. And by hearing me share that my relapse was just one single pill, I've had addicts get honest with me, and that has meant the world to me, because it made me realize, like, me sharing that relapse is part of my story is a way for me to inspire other people to get honest about their own stories, because it is true, we get to decide how honest our program is. You know, like, no one's monitoring us. You can take as many dirty cakes as you want, because really this is between you and God, you know? And but I truly believe that this program is like the thing. I'm interrupting myself for a second, Carl. How long am I supposed to share? I forgot.
It don't matter, whatever.
Okay. That's a funny thing about being.
We're in 33 minutes in right now, so.
Okay, and it's usually about a half hour.
40 minutes. It don't matter.
Okay.
You can start getting with some hope or some funny shit, whatever you want.
Some funny shit. You guys want to hear some jokes?
Yeah.
Some jokes that I've written about it. Well, I will say, yeah, you know, that's probably a good transition.
Because that's your message of hope, kind of. You started.
It really is.
Comedian.
And the one of the, you know, I remember when I was pursuing stand-up comedy, because I was raised in an environment that told me that this was like very selfish, and that I couldn't save lives. I wasn't saving lives with comedy. I couldn't really be of service with comedy, that it was all about like me needing a stage and and it was attention seeking. And that's not been about my experience. Like, my real purpose in life, one of the reasons I got so lost in an active addiction is because I wanted this, and I thought that it was a pipe dream, and I thought that it wasn't realistic for me to pursue it. But one of the things that I learned about getting clean is that if you don't honor your purpose, it will metastasize. Whatever we are supposed to do in life, we have to honor it. That is surrendering to the will of God, you know? And I realized, like, this is my job, and I can be of service through comedy. And the first time I was asked to do a Narcotics Anonymous convention, I'm fellowship dropping. I don't know if you can edit. Sorry,
It's all right.
But but I've done many 12 steps convention, but it was the most rewarding comedy I've ever done. And I remember that people would come up to me at the end and be like, newcomers, and they couldn't believe that it was even possible to laugh. Like they're like, they didn't believe I was clean. They could not believe that a room of 1,000 people were laughing and they weren't using. Like they couldn't associate and imagine the fact that laughter could come from it. And I remember in my very first convention, I walked up to on the stage and identified as an addict, and I remember the first thing that I said, which wasn't even a written joke, but it sort of was the impetus to the flow, was I said, "This is the only place in the world where we can stand up, raise our hand, and say, I have fucked up my life beyond imagination. You get a standing ovation and a book." You know, like it doesn't happen anywhere else in life.
Yeah.
Like I love that, you know. And so I will tell you, I'll tell you one of the jokes that I shared last night in my story, because I realized that like this whole quarantine thing, I've been doing a pretty good job like assimilating to it. And I was like, I know why, because I went to rehab. Like that's like quarantine right there, even though I laughed after a day, but still that intense quarantine where you're like, you just have a TV mounted to the back of the wall, like a 13-inch TV that's just playing like Intervention in Hoarders on loops, like trying to like infiltrate your brain. I remember in that first day, just watching Intervention in Hoarders, I was like, oh my God, I totally know how to stop hoarding. Get them all addicted to crack. They'll sell all their shit. You know, I didn't even think of this. I think one of the reasons I didn't stay is when I got to rehab, they called me Centrum because I took every drug from A to Z. Like I didn't have a drug of choice. And they were like, you gotta have a drug of choice, Renee. You gotta have a drug of choice. What's your drug of choice? And I was like, I don't know. Although I did have an affinity for pills, I'm not gonna lie. And if my name was on the bottle, even better, but not necessary. We know that, right? I remember, oh my God, you guys, I remember when I first moved in with my girlfriend, when I was clean, and she had a bottle of like Vicodin in her cabinet, and she was like trying to do the right thing and like throw out the pills. And she turns to me and she says, "Oh, I don't have to throw these out. They're expired." And I looked at her and I was like, wait, I'm sorry. I didn't even know that pills had an expiration date. And number two, what makes you think that an expiration date is a deterrent for an addict? Like, she's like, well, Renee, you just have to read the bottle. I'm like, read the bottle. You read the bottle and say take one every 6 hours as needed for pain. I read the bottle as take one every couple of minutes as needed for unresolved mommy issues. That's what I see. You know what I mean? It's amazing. When I was flying here, remember when they used to let us get on airplanes, guys? Remember when that was a thing? I remember when I was flying here, like I was like stuck in the standby line, and I heard this woman. I love how like my higher power will show up and just remind me in funny ways that I'm an addict. And I heard this like couple in front of me, and I think this woman like had gotten her wisdom teeth removed or something. And she turned to her husband and she's like, oh shit, honey, you know what? I forgot my Vicodin. And I had that moment standing behind her where I was like, I would never forget my Vicodin. I would forget my toothpaste. I would forget my boarding pass. But my Vicodin would have been the first shit in that bag. You know? Like, I don't know. That's like a thing. That's a thing where people forget their Vicodin. But I'll end with this. But my most favorite experience being an addict is all of like my wonderful normal friends who try to be like so kind and accommodating to me. And I had my friend take me out for my 6-year anniversary, but he was like a regular person, you know. We go out to a restaurant and he orders a virgin pina colada, and he gets all worried and he says to me like, "Wait, I'm sorry, Renee, is this like a trigger for you because it looks like alcohol?" And I was like, well, water looks like vodka. I don't freak out in the shower. Can you imagine him in the shower like, oh my God, you got to turn this off. I'm getting to the shakes. I can't. Like, that would be insane. All right, you guys. That's it for my jokes. I can't tell if people are laughing because it's virtual.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that funny? I just did a live show last night, and it was the weirdest thing in the world because I'm like, I have no idea if any of this is funny because comedians respond to laughter. So when there isn't any, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if that works.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. What I noticed, like when you go live, right, and you stream, and when I go live off my phone, it gets more people on. I don't know why. It's
Uh-huh.
just weird. Because the Wi-Fi and shit. I always wanted like to invent a Wi-Fi stick, like that you can
That's
just stick
brilliant.
into the thing. And I thought about that. I was like, they don't got one of them. They just got the hotspot on here, and when you run the hotspot together with the thing, um, it it kind of lags and stuff. You'll never get a proper connection anyway. Well, Wi-Fi, I don't care how much money you spend. I don't care. Like there's always going to be technical difficulties. Well, how I kind of started this page, I had this vision. I got out of treatment. I got senior client leadership of the community, something new that they started. I'm from Baltimore, but I'm up in Washington, Pennsylvania. And like I got sent to this faith-based program. And like I had this like spiritual awakening, man. I was real hostile in there, carried them behaviors like from Baltimore up to PA. I called it resentment. I did a stabbing out here. I got locked up and been stuck in PA, right? It's crazy. Got with this girl, destroyed her. You know how the thing goes. So I came up here, man, just with I had a real close mind, not open-minded and all, but I already had the message of recovery stored in me since 2005 because I have had some clean time, but it was dirty time, but I still had some stagnant time, basically like using and abusing the program, like selling drugs in the rooms or whatever. We ain't going to get into that, but we can, because this is a raw and uncut feed. But so I got sent to this town. I didn't know where I was going, and like I got on the bed, and like I planned this name, Inspirational Freestyle Recovery Flow, because it's a flow off top the head. People's like, "Are you a rapper or something?" I'm like, "Nah." I'm like, whatever comes to my mind, inspirational, I just flow with it. So I'm real enthusiastic and passionate, and I just got back to my bunk, man, and like it was weird. Like God was standing next to me, he said, just go live and hit the button and tell your story. And so I just told a little bit, and I just started, spreading the message of hope and telling people, look, man, it's time to get off drugs. And it just grew. In 8 months, it hit 10,000 followers. But
That's amazing.
but
I'm so inspired.
but
Really, like the fact
so
that you do
yeah.
this is pretty incredible.
So people in the rooms was like, oh, you're going to get high. You don't have 12-step knowledge, this, that, and the third. So I played with this thing for a little bit, it kind of puffed my head up at first. And then it like, I got a sponsor and I just humbled, man. I just bought into the program. And, I went through 9 sponsors. That's my story. Like, I'm sorry if it ain't your story, everybody, but my story was like, I'm going to get a girl. She's going to fix me. And then like I left the program, because they said I was carrying the message too much and I wasn't being responsible and accountable and being dedicated to that place. So, the predecessors like kind of carried the message to me. They were Christians and all that, but they worked the 12-step fellowship of, what we're in. So I watched them for a while, man, because people can talk all this good shit, but they ain't living it.
Yeah.
And that's anywhere in life. And I'm raw and uncut with that. And so I got into this relationship, got hurt, came out with this clothing line called Successful Recovery Work. It's like a logo. It's like got a dump truck. And I sold my girl a piece of clothing. I left her program, kind of manipulated her, carried a couch in, had sex with her, never left. That's my story, though. That's what I tell people. Like, she was like, motherfucker, you ain't coming up in this house and you ain't working no fucking program. You got me fucked up. I got an education. I'm trying to be a therapist. Yeah, she carried the message of hope to me. And that inspired me to get honest and be like, yo, if I'm living in this girl's house, this is where it gets deep. So somebody slid a paper under the door. I was staying with her and shit. And, the house and shit, she lives in the house and shit right now. But we're going to get a place and shit, our own house one day. But so the hope is that I live with her baby's dad. It might sound weird, but this is my growth because I wouldn't be my pride and ego, but like, I ain't living with your motherfucking baby's dad. I just humble myself. I built a relationship with him because I want to inspire other men that's having that problem and think they're Brock Lesnar all tough, puffed up, build a relationship with the baby's dad. And that's what I did, right, sis? And the hope is I'm on the lease today. That's the
That's
hope.
amazing.
Yeah. So that's kind of a wild story. People's like, I don't know if I could do that. Sometimes we got to do things when we don't want to do it and get
Totally.
uncomfortable in order to grow, in order to blossom into our purpose. This is my purpose because my grandmother said, you know, how I got this laptop is crazy. A guy seen me, you know, is my brother. He's probably on here, and he said, "You want a laptop?" He ordered it Sunday. It was here Tuesday. I went out and bought. He bought me $100 camera. I got the lights. I don't really got the lights like that you have, but I'm looking into that, and I'm looking into like I came out with some bracelets. These bracelets right here. But I gave when I came out with that clothing line. All I did was take in the process, like out there in active addiction. You know, because that's a process too. A lot of people don't know that and shit. But like, I come to experience like, so I was like, maybe I came out with some women's leggings, some clothing. I just gave it out because that wasn't even my purpose to like manipulate, to bait people in. It's like I was just blessing people because God was like, you got to bless people, man. All you did was take out there. So I just started giving leggings away. I'm coming out with some more leggings, starting a store up here, and we'll on this. And my vision is to start a spiritual cafe. I don't want to put my ideas out too much, and to have people fly in from different states, man, and tell their story. You know what I mean? And
I love that idea.
so they'll basically carry the message to the youth. You know, people that was in the streets think that they're gangbangers and all this because I've been in and out of prisons my whole life, and I was a pig. And now the hope is I'm engaged today. You know, and I just kind of listened to my girl, man, what she got to say. Like she means well, and like her mental health and shit. Sometimes I can say some ignorant shit to her, and like sometimes it's best for me just to shut up, man. But sometimes I can be, you know, wanting to go back to that chaos and confusion and stir the pot a little bit. And I heard members say that, you know, sometimes we might, you know, work these steps and we might not like the person that we're with. And like, that ain't my case. Like, I committed to this girl. I told her, like, she has, you know, all women and men too. Really, I'm a sensitive little boy inside trying to be a man. You know what I mean? And like, that was me showing growth, living with her baby's dad. That's what I experienced and built a relationship with him to carry the message to people that think that they're like different. Oh, I'm different. That ain't going to be me. You don't know until you're in a situation like that. So when somebody comes in, I have some experience in that area, really powerful experience. Basically, I just humbled myself and just built a relationship with this dude. I mean, I paid to live at his house and stack some money up. And then like the guy in the program, that program I went to, he showed up and got me on the lease.
That's really great.
Yeah.
I love your story. I'm always inspired for me. I'm always inspired by stories that don't
That's a little
fit
version.
into the like
I'm going to tell my story soon on here. I haven't did it. I did it once on. So I did.
Let me know because I want to be here to support.
I didn't know.
I want a link to your clothing line.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I want to be able to support you too. So let me know.
This what I didn't know. So I started a personal page. I brought a team member. It was my teammate, and I was like, "Yo," I brought him on and shit, and then we started it. And then I remember the date I did it. I did it in September by myself, but I had him on here up in November. 8th is when we started doing it. So we kept doing it, and it just kept reaching people. And this guy that spotted me that was doing it drove all the way from Delaware to carry the message. And he worked the program, but he got a lot of shit and drama out there and shit with the program because he had his own name stamped on his bracelets. Like, I got my own name and shit on these bracelets. I sell them for $2 a piece, and like I already had 30 orders, and I already went through bags and bags of bracelets. Like, it's only, I don't know, man. That's my vision. Like, so I'm going to stamp it, running through LegalZoom. I don't know if anybody got to LLC. I need some help in this area. You know, I got a guy that backs me. He's financially. He just said, God told me to bless you. And what he said is, you remind me of my brother that overdosed because you got the vision to help people and you just stay dedicated and you stay consistent, man. Because that drug was consistent and dedicated. But we didn't know until it got up in us that it gave us some feelings that we was going to be attached to, and that we needed it. That's why I think, because I was a mind state of a drug dealer too, so I got that mind state to carry the message to drug dealers as well, right? It's like, look, man, this is what it is. This, I don't sugarcoat nothing. I don't know if you ever watch me, but you'll start watching me on here, and
I've watched a couple. Yeah, I think you're a delight.
Yeah, I just want to help people, sis. That's where my passion is. There has been so many people that I've impacted, and well, God impacted. I give all the glory to God. You know what I mean? Like, the gift of desperation got me here. I knew that I was using against my will when I was out there after I destroyed that girl that I got out of jail with, and I built a relationship. And really, I didn't know what love was. You know, we have group conscious, like at the table. Sometimes it's best for me just not to talk, man. You know what I mean? Because I think I know. I know, but you don't know shit. But like I said, I just got that vision, and I hit the live button. It just started connecting. But I didn't know you could build a business page on Facebook, and it shows the reach and shows where it hits. And this girl, she had contacted me. She was like, look, I'm struggling, and she was like, I need help. And I let her get on here live using. She was using. And I said, I don't judge nobody. And guess what? She got a year and some change clean right now in New Zealand.
Amazing. Wow.
So, I mean, that it reached Canada, and like I got messages in my phone. I mean, I don't get on here. All this shit's truth. It ain't made up. Like, I don't say this to want validation from none of my followers. I say this to say, if you got a vision, take it into action. If you got a dream, turn it into reality. Don't ever let somebody say that you can't do something when you can do it. Because for me, as long as I got God humbling me and let me know, look, man, this is my platform. Because that's where a lot of people get the shit fucked up at. You know, they want to self-will some shit, and then I'm self-willing back in the penitentiary. That's my story. I want to self-will some shit. That's why I know this is a God-given platform. And it was an honor to have you on here and hear your inspiring message. You know, we went for 52 minutes. I told a little bit of my you know, how I got here, and it was an honor just having you on here and hearing you. You know what I mean? In good spirits, hearing you carry the message, and
thank you.
We'll be in contact. Maybe we'll pick some topics and we'll share on it.
I love it, and
I want to dedicate to that.
I mean, you're an inspiration in so many ways. Not only your story, but just even creating this platform. And you know, I've always wanted to do, like, in the comedy realm, even know how to utilize these platforms. And so, like, sometimes we don't even know how we're inspiring people. Obviously your message is amazing, but the fact that, like, you had this idea and you knew how to put it out in the world, that the fact that you knew how to put it out in the world is part of what's incredibly inspiring about you.
Yeah. So what I did is, everybody, I mean, like, I do feel and care what people think about. If you don't, people say that, oh, I don't care. And, you know, my predecessor told me at 33 years, get the fuck away from them, because they a motherfucking liar. Everybody cares, man. You might get to a point in your life where you're comfortable with yourself, but deep down inside, man, everybody might not be there. But listen, some people want to be validated once in a while.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Want to be told, like my girl, she want to be told she looks beautiful. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. So I'm saying, like, tell people, like, you're an inspiration, you're amazing and shit. Like, so how I did it, man, I just kept praying, and God just kept revealing this, revealing that, and do this, do that. And it's because of my passion and enthusiasm that I've touched so many people, because I scream. And I don't know, it's just the way I carry the message. And people's like, oh, no, some people's like, just listen to them. And
Just
I
listen.
talk about the
I always
disease. Huh?
I always say prayer is when I talk to God and meditation is when I listen.
Mm. Sometimes, I had to take a day off, like 2 days. People are like, I'm worried about you. I'm like, listen, like I got to do the work too.
Mhm.
I got to maintain my relationship, or somebody else will maintain to her.
It's
That's what I
so
tell
true.
people.
It's so
Huh?
true. Oh,
Yeah, that's what I tell people, man. If you ain't playing your part in your relationship, another dude will. And another
yeah.
girl, you know what I mean? Like it goes vice versa. Like another if a girl ain't playing a relationship, a guy's gonna find somebody else that will. That's just what it is. You know what I mean? But
True.
I appreciate you having you on here.
Thank you. I appreciate you asking me. You're definitely a delight. Let's stay in contact for sure.
Yes. You have a blessed night.
You
All right.
too.
Thank you.
Bye, love.
Love. Man, she was powerful, man. So we're gonna carry this out. Can y'all hear me? Myra, thank you. Can y'all hear me good? All right, Lord Almighty God, I just want you to place hands on me. That message just gets out and touches somebody is sick and suffering in the grips of active addiction. Thank you for allowing me to carry the message tonight. Amen.